Hello, hello, hello. I am so honored to have Dr. Patrice Berry on the Sofa Squad today. It is so exciting to have you here to finally talk to you. I am absolutely honored to have you here. We're going to be talking about the Megan Boswell case, trial, all those things. So, first and foremost, thank you for being here. If you could take a moment, introduce yourself. So many of the Sofa Squad already know you, literally, like either talking to you in the comments when you're there, or just like everybody's like, oh, sending me your videos and all that kind of stuff. But just for formality purposes, introduce yourself. Tell us about Dr. Patrice Berry, please.
Thank you so much for having me. So glad to get to join you here on the sofa. I am Dr. Berry. I'm a licensed psychologist and I have an outpatient practice. And then I also create educational content here on YouTube, taking a look at the legal and psychological aspects of true crime.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I know your insights are going to be great because so many times, like during like live chats, you'll be in the comment section, like kind of just adding your, stuff in there. And it's so helpful and so insightful. And so be sure, everybody, I'm going to put Dr. Berry's information down in the description box. So just be sure and check her out if you're not already subscribed and whatnot. And so what I wanted to do today, we were talking a little bit before we came on here. And again, with this case, the Megan Boswell case, I didn't even like make questions because I have 10,000 of them. Like I told you, I could talk to you for 5 hours straight and just pick your brain, but I won't do that to you. I want you to come back to the sofa. So I just want to kind of go through it, ask some general questions, see it also as something, if you're like, well, hey, let me add this insight to it and just go about it in that way. This was such a crazy trial. And I guess if you want to start off with like, what are just some of your overall general thoughts of the case, of the trial?
I think one of the saddest things is the way that baby Evelyn was unalived and just how the lack of care. So when we think of a mother, generally we're thinking of someone who is caring and loving. And I think the interest in this case came from how could a mother do this to their child, even a young mother. So even someone that is, in their young adulthood, 17, 18, 19 years old, but still, how does this happen? I know that's the question that many people in my community were trying to grapple with when it came to this case.
100%. And same over here. That right there, you summed it up so well and that's something that haunts me with this as well. One thing I kept asking over and over and still do and spend like too much time trying to figure it out, which I guess I never will, is that dynamic of how do you go from, and I'll use her Facebook account because I was like stalking that during trial or whatever. And she's posting pictures. Oh, my little thing's going to be this much weight, this big. How do you go from that? And it gives me goosebumps even getting ready to say it, to the condition that she was ultimately found in. How do you close your eyes to go to sleep again ever again in life? All those things.
And I think that part of it was the way that she grew up, and that doesn't excuse anything that she did. It just kind of helps me understand, because there are a lot of people that have histories of childhood trauma and they would never do what she did. In her case, there seemed to be this selfishness, manipulation, and lying, and then it seemed like she hated her daughter at times. I think the fact that she described her daughter as mean AF and like legit felt that her 12, 13-month-old was mean when children that age. So I have a 7-year-old, and even now, I wouldn't necessarily describe him as mean. Like when kids have things going on, kids try to get needs met. That's what children do. And I think her child just trying to get their diaper changed, or maybe just wanting food or wanting attention or just wanting to be held, those small things she might have interpreted as her child being mean.
And you bring up several things in that statement. I'm going to go back through it a little bit. First of all, the mean statement. Yes, that was so bizarre to me because I interpreted it several different ways. Number one, what you're describing there, where I was like, I believe that she truly meant like mean as if we would describe another adult or a coworker that's like mean to us that we don't like. And that was so bizarre to me. There was another level to where I was like, so for example, I don't have kids, but I have little dogs. And I'll do like this sometimes where I'm like, you're just a little meanie, or, oh, you're being mean, or like he's chewing on it, whatever. But it's like in a cutesy way. And so I've heard some people describe kids as like, like almost like a, oh yeah, he's a tough one or she's a mean one, but this felt legit. Like you said, like this felt like she thought that. And when you were saying that, children need their needs met and this, that, and the other, I almost wonder, and going back also to your talking about her selfishness, if Megan's sitting there doom scrolling on her phone, this is when nobody else is around. Anything that Evelyn brought into Megan's circumference to distract her from whatever it was she was doing was, I wonder if Megan interpreted that as like an attack or being mean, which was just simply like, girl, her diaper's been on her for 5 days. Like, this is not being mean. This is survival.
Yeah. And another thing that I've heard some other people mention, and I think I mentioned it on my channel as well, that it could have also been Megan projecting her feelings onto her daughter. So if I'm mad at my partner, I might think he's mad when I'm mad. So that's what projection is. It's putting how I feel onto somebody else. And you can do that with children too. And she could have been projecting her own feeling, because I wonder if she was being mean to her daughter. And it sounds like there might have been some neglect and some harm that was happening prior to this date. And just the fact that she could describe her as mean, especially in her police interview when they asked her, hey, let's talk about this, because, first of all, you have the right to remain silent, but now is not the time when your child is missing to be like, oh yeah, she was mean. Like who does that? Like that was the truth that she told and the many lies.
Oh, completely. And another thing on the interviews, this stuck out to me. I've said a couple of times in one of the news interviews. At one point, the anchor is like, she's like, "Is there anything that the community can do to help you, search for Evelyn?" And Megan immediately goes, "No." And then she tries to reel it back a little bit. And she's like, "Well, they can keep helping." And it literally like chills me to my bone, because I was like, that was the truth. That was her knee-jerk reaction. Nobody in their right mind would say, like, to me, and again, I don't like sitting here saying, like, well, anybody should act this way. Like, none of us know how we would act in that legit situation. Clearly, we know this was not legit. But to me, I think a baseline would be, if your kid's missing, especially for a couple of months, and you haven't reported them, and you're now at the news, whatever, you would have a picture. Like, you would be, yes, this is who she is. You can help. Have you seen her? Anybody live near this place in Virginia where she, or wherever it was that my mom dropped her off at? I need a ride there right now, whatever. But just the immediate, like, no, I don't need help. Right there, I was like, this news reporter has to be like, oh my gosh, like, so guilty.
Yeah. And I think she didn't want Evelyn to be found. I don't think she wanted her to be found. It really is just such a sad, tragic case.
Now, I want to talk about the lying aspect of this, but before we get to that, and I'm kind of saying that as like a little bookmark so that you can round me back out to that, because I'm having 10,000 thoughts going right now. I'm so excited to be talking to you about this. So I've been looking so forward to this. I've got just so many things, but let's talk for a minute about the ability and whatever this looks like. Several things going on here, but like when they showed us the picture of the trailer, take out the fact of what, like, let's set aside Megan, or I'm sorry, Evelyn, what happened to her. Someone living in that condition where I was like, oh, wow, this is intense. And then you put on top of it a baby in the picture, which, because I've said this to my, live chats and stuff, where I'm like, I would be paranoid with my dogs walking around in that, for fear of like, what if they get spoiled food? What if they get something poisonous, let alone a little baby? Because in my mind, I'm imagining what went on there is, like I said, Megan's over here scrolling and Evelyn's just into everything, like just wandering around the house as best as a kid can,
Yeah.
just left to her own devices until Megan's forced to deal with her. What do you make of the ability to just put those blinders on and be able to live that way?
And I wonder if she had been used to living that way. So I don't know what her parents' home was like growing up. It reminds me of like a hoarder or somebody that like does not clean, or a very depressed home or something. Like it reminds me of things just completely in shambles. And it is unsafe for young kids, especially, to be in that environment, because they could just pick something random up off the floor that could be harmful to them. And so the fact that people probably knew the condition of the trailer, I'm guessing, but it might have been normalized within the community. Sometimes in more rural communities, I've seen that where the standard of cleanliness in one area, but I think anyone would agree that that level of filth was not appropriate, was way overboard for a child to be, or
Mhm.
anyone to really be living in.
Yeah, yeah. And so now let's talk about the line. And I mean, I almost want to say she took Casey Anthony's crown because when I started piecing together this whole thing, and again, if you look at the way that the public, let's say, digested the case and whatnot, we were presented with the first sprinklings of the information. And then quickly the state locked everything down to where the general public, like me watching this, we only got bits and pieces. So when it finally went to trial, I knew that there were these crazy interviews that didn't look good. And, Evelyn was found and, somewhere in this whatever, but I didn't 100% know. Once we started seeing the evidence all come to light, and like, for example, they're showing police interviews that would take place where moments later she would walk out and do the news interview. And just in those two interviews, completely different stories, absolutely lying. And then connecting the dots with each person. My mom did it, Ethan did it, Hunter did it. And I don't understand and try to make sense of how does someone lie to that degree? And in my mind, I'm think that they'll get away with it. But I mean, when you find that level of lying, are they not thinking I'm going to get away with this? Is like what is typically going on beneath the surface?
And I wonder if she had a pattern of lying before this. So, like, this wasn't the first time when she was caught doing something that she wasn't supposed to do, that she began to try to lie her way out of it. And it seemed like she didn't take accountability or responsibility at all for any of her behavior. And she would blame anyone, including her mom, Ethan, who they thought was the father and wasn't, and she was just blaming everyone and pointing the finger at anyone else, and then finally saying maybe it was an accident, but still kind of blaming Hunter, and I don't think any of it was true. I don't know if it's a psychological concept of denial. So sometimes our brains will try to protect us, but I like her lies were too all over the place for me to think, "Oh, it was just denial." This seems pathological, like she's lying to avoid getting into trouble. She's just throwing stuff at the wall like, "Will you believe anything? Please just don't look at me. Just don't
Mhm.
don't think it's me." And 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 the fact that she would blame her mom and anyone else in her life. And I saw some interviews after the fact where they talked about if her dad hadn't reported Evelyn missing, like maybe she could have gotten away with this if he hadn't stepped up and really, advocated for his granddaughter.
Oh yeah. Because on that note too, when they showed the drone footage and brought us to the property, because when this first came out or whatever, and then there was, okay, we found the remains. What little I knew, it was like, okay, I think they found Evelyn like beneath the dad's house somewhere. So, it's still kind of like, I think Megan did it, but whatever. So once again, the evidence is coming out. We're seeing the drone footage and the playhouse. In my mind was a plastic Fisher Price
Oh,
playhouse in the woods that was mildewed up. And I was like, oh, it's a wooden playhouse made with love by the grandfather. Okay, that's different. Oh, the property's clean and orderly. That's different. You know, and then it's right outside the grandmother's house. That's different. All these things or whatever. And in my mind, I was like, yeah, I guess Megan was thinking that Evelyn would just stay out there forever, maybe, or maybe she would move the body at some point, and she was okay just walking past that, almost like a dirty little secret that I have locked away in this playhouse.
yeah.
But then also, I'm like, did you not think that like your dad or your grandma, well, maybe not the grandmother, but like someone on that property might eventually stumble in there? Like that level of disconnect baffles me.
And I also wanna add, she was also lying that she was pregnant with Hunter's child, and so just the lies just keep spiraling and spiraling, and I think she wanted a fresh start with Hunter, and she wanted to be tied to him with a child, and once again, using manipulation, because I don't know that she formed healthy attachments, healthy connections well. Like, it seems like she uses people and she used kind of Evelyn in a way, and then was even going to try to use this, she said she was pregnant and she wasn't, that she was trying to do anything she could to try to find love and affection for herself. But I don't think she was able to give that to her daughter, which unfortunately in this situation, for her to just discard her daughter the way that she did, because you've heard of other cases where, because of postpartum psychosis or something happened and a parent harmed their child, uh, the the way that Evelyn died is just so disturbing to me. The fact that anybody could do it almost sounded like torture. Like, it was horrific the way that she let her child die. Because normally as a
Mhm.
parent, you're thinking, I don't want my child to suffer. I don't want my child to be in harm's way. And so that's where it just makes this case even more complex. And it just makes things just like you're just trying to wrap your mind around how could somebody let this happen?
Mhm. Oh, yeah. Because also too, like, so on that note of the way that it seemingly went down, one thing with this that still haunts me is the fact that, like, we don't technically know exactly, like, a video camera was there and we saw or whatever. So these are some of the I'm curious to get your opinion, but these are some of the thoughts I go through. So, and I agree with you about the Hunter thing. I think that she latched on to Hunter. I think Evelyn was a pawn. I think Evelyn didn't get her where she was going, maybe with other people. And then Hunter, like, all these intersections took place.
Yeah.
Hunter comes into the picture. She does that. He has money. He's this handsome guy. But, you know, then so there's that going on the back burner. Then let's go over here to Megan and Evelyn. So in my world, I'm like, was there and let's call it a catastrophic incident. And the catastrophic incident could be Evelyn pulls her hair, she goes off and does something.
Mhm.
I'm changing her diaper, but we know how often she probably did that. She flings poop on me. I go into a rage and do blank versus the absolute conscious thought of being like, oh, well, I'm going out with Hunter tonight and you're over here crying and you're not going to really look good in this picture. So you've got to go. You see what I'm saying? Like those two streets right there, I kind of beat myself up over trying to figure out. Do you have any thoughts on what you think might have taken place or anything like that?
And because of how many lies she told, I don't think we'll ever know. I
Hmm.
think she had animosity towards her daughter. I think the thought of taking her daughter's life had probably come into her mind before, and unfortunately, one day she did it. And I don't know if it was she just didn't want to find a sitter, did not want someone else to care for her child, because she could have relinquished custody of Evelyn. She could have, if there was another safe adult, even because I'm sure the former foster parent probably would have taken her in if she didn't want, her mom or dad. Like, she could have found somebody. It sounded like her friends were more upset about the situation than she was at times, because for those 2 months that her daughter was missing, she went on with her life as though nothing happened. And that's where, and trying to reassure everyone, "Oh, no, no, it's fine. My mom has her. Oh, no, Ethan has her. Oh, no." And she's disrupting all of these people's lives and not even caring about it. And so that's where it can be hard to see, because I could see it happening either way, where it was something that was planned. People have mentioned the fact that her onesie was, like, halfway zipped or something, so I think that's why some people think, was she changing her, or was Evelyn asking to be changed? But I don't think we'll ever know what happened. It would have been interesting if she had testified, but I think she would have lied. I don't think she would have held well on cross-examination, and they could have asked her about all of the evidence and all the multiple stories, and I think the jury would have seen. I don't think it would have went well if she had testified.
I agree. I agree. Yeah, because basically at a certain point, I was like, okay, so I'm believing nothing that is coming from Megan's mouth, like
Yeah.
zero.
Yeah.
Even if you asked for the time and she looked at her watch and told you, I would have to check the clock on the wall.
Totally.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's just I've never seen anything like it. And yeah, like you said, part of true crime, and that brings me to it, like we were talking about, is the psychology, but then also figuring out, and for whatever reason, like, well, what happened? What was the story? And when some of these things are left unknown, I mean, clearly we see the outcome, and another thing that haunts me, or well, several things, but do you have any, and I don't know what you would call it in psychological terms or whatever, but the foil that she wrapped around the head, do you think that that was a mechanism of like I'm trying to prevent smell, or is there some psychological component that you think was going on to that too, or maybe a mixture?
And I think it could be various things. So I am not a forensic psychologist. So I follow a few forensic psychologists that can break that, like they study crime and the psychology of crime. This is something I do for fun. And so, but I am a clinical psychologist. So I look at diagnosis and I do treatment. I work with complex trauma. But with this situation, I wonder if she was knew what she was going to do and she covered her face to not see. Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I wonder if it was either a mechanism of suffocation or if it was to not see
Yeah.
because she left her there and and I think there was other trash. Like she didn't even like there was other trash in the trash can.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it was to silence her as well, because Evelyn was probably crying. Because, to my knowledge, there weren't, like, because when you hear of situations like this, sometimes you hear of a parent, drugging the child or something, a more lethal way that's faster, where the child, it's horrific, you don't want it to happen, but in this case, it sounds like it was really torturous, which is just beyond sad.
Yeah. Yeah, it's even more monstrous. And what do you make of like, I'm just trying to like kind of comb my thoughts over here about different things. Let's talk about like kind of towards the end of the trial when they give the closing arguments. There was at one point the camera panned over to Megan after they were done or whatever. And for me, and again, I mean, I wasn't there, I don't know her, whatever. So when I say of the times I've seen her, it's limited to what the public has seen. But the look on her face, I was like, oh, that's the first time I've seen her like scared, or like she had this look of fear. And I don't know why it surprised me, because I guess it surprised me it was the first time that I've seen it, where I was just like, I would have been that way this whole time. Like seeing the evidence we saw, I'm like, I wouldn't have taken this to trial, number one. I mean, this is really bad. But then that was the first time that I was like, wow, she's like actually scared here. Like it's almost like it just hit her. You know what I'm saying?
And it could have been fear of the consequence, fear that, "Oh, wow, this really is going to the jury," and it might have felt more real because this happened 5 years ago, and even though it's 5 years ago, like, that's still you would expect to see some emotion or something. I heard there were times that, she did appear to cry, and in situations like this, I'm not always sure if they're, like, crying for themselves or for their child because, I think she wanted to be viewed as a good mom, and so that's why when people post pretty pictures of their relationship on Instagram or Facebook, I don't because I think people's true life and most healthy people, you don't post your worst moments. You don't post the real, and so a lot of times what people post, it's for clicks, likes, and so the fact that she the relationship looked like she was a loving mother online, but then the reality of it is that she wasn't really taking care of her daughter the way that she should have, and she was convicted of this horrific crime.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that when I looked through her Facebook or whatever and saw, like, even some of, like, the little memes that she shared, which I get it, people just, like, randomly share these memes and whatnot, but they're, like, good mom memes and things like that, and I was like, "This didn't age well," kind of a thing, because it does seem that there is that superficial level thing. I feel like I heard and I don't know this for a fact, so this is sofa speculation, but I feel like somebody had said somewhere in one of the comments that she had done a Facebook post and like almost like used Hunter's last name, or like maybe it was like pretending like, oh, I'm moving into his house, like took a picture of the house, something like that. Now I could be completely wrong, but I felt like I heard a couple of people say something to that effect.
And I think they did apply for an apartment together, and they said that they were gonna have 3 people living there, and when they at like, the 3rd person was her the pretend baby, like, that was supposed to be like, it was never Evelyn, and so her plans with Hunter did not involve Evelyn, and so that's my general theory, and it's just sofa speculation. I love that, and I might steal it. I love it,
Go
but
for it. Go for it.
I think she saw her daughter as an obstacle, and I think she wanted her own happiness. I think she wanted to be loved, and children require our love. Just like children, pets, like they need our attention. They need our love. Now, a child can smile at you. They can do these things, but normally the adult has to be fulfilled, and you can't expect to get that love from your child. I think that came up in the Chloe Driver case too, where she made some statements about, like, her daughter not loving her, and her daughter was too young to be able to express or show or to even understand the concept of love.
Mhm. That's another case we'll have to talk about
Yeah.
sometime because that whole concept right there, the psychology behind looking to your child to fulfill something that's just, I mean, not appropriate. They're not there yet.
Mhm.
That whole thing right there, I'm sure is the basis for a lot of this true crime stuff that we watch that does involve tragic situations like this. Another thing too, if you go back and look at the foster mom who we mentioned earlier,
Yeah.
who just seemed like this amazing, warm, wonderful, like, she reminded me just of people that I've grown up around, like,
Mm.
she seemed very familiar to me,
Yeah.
and so hearing her, especially when she got up during, character testimony during sentencing and whatnot, do you feel like, how do I even word it? Because she had such a different perspective of Megan, and so part of me was like, did Megan know to present a certain mask to her? Was it part of that game, or did she authentically see a part of Megan that was this what she's describing as because she's like, she was 17, pregnant, matted hair, lice, this, that, the other. She got up, she cared for that baby, she did this. Megan's telling her in text, "You're better than my family," and did it. And I kind of believed that statement. That was one of the few things that I thought was probably genuine, but it could have also been part of Megan's manipulation of just working whoever's in front of her over.
And I've worked with foster youth before, and sometimes there's a honeymoon period where you and so if it's less than a year, if it's less than 6 months to a year, sometimes there can be this period of time where they don't get to meet the genuine person. So where the foster youth is masking just to be loved and accepted, which is like that's understandable because something happened where they're not able to remain in the home, and now they're in this unique, odd, and she was 17 years old at the time when she went into foster care, and so she's old enough to kind of understand, okay, I need to follow the rules. I think she still had some issues, some minor issues in the foster home, because I think she wanted to go back to her birth family at some point, but she was probably able to get away with more with her birth family than she was because the foster parent was probably making sure that she went to school, that she was taking care of herself, that she was taking care of her child. And when you're in foster care, you have social services involved where she's also trying to not lose her child as well. Because if the foster parent had seen that she was being neglectful, that there was an issue, Megan could have lost custody of her daughter too. So those are some of the things that I think about. And then some people like the baby phase because babies need you. They like to be needed. So as kids get older, they don't need you as much. And I love that phase. So that's my kiddo when he wakes up in the morning, if he's hungry, he can go grab like a little like he can go grab something on his
Self-sufficient.
own. I I love it. Like, but some people love, like, "Oh my gosh, I have to nurture you, like, you need me." Some people like that phase, and as their child starts to get more independent, when people don't have safe, healthy attachments, because the child starts to like, they don't want you be with them every moment. Like they want to play on their own. They want to kind of explore, and they might not follow your rules, and that's normal child development. But some people interpret that as you're being disrespectful, you're being mean to me, you're, I don't know, like they interpret it through a lens that's not healthy.
And you saying that right there, I just had this like quick flash of almost like when Megan was saying she's mean and whatnot. I'm sure that was a level going on there
Yeah.
of this. Okay, Evelyn, because I mean, again, poor little Evelyn didn't even get what was 13 months old that she
Yeah.
was or whatever. I mean, she didn't even get a chance to really develop into you know what I'm saying? Like even a full grown toddler or whatever. But
Yeah.
nonetheless, she would have moved away from that little tiny baby phase that Megan was so big on posting
Mhm.
to the, oh, this is actually a human, that needs stuff and, isn't, whatever. And yeah, I could completely see that. And then as you said, it makes you then wonder, go back that next generation, look at Megan's mother who got on the stand and basically took the blame of that. I was a horrible mother. I was this, I was that. Tommy, who got up there, who, you know, he went back and forth, whatever, because it almost seemed to me, my interpretation of him is obviously he reported. He knew something was up. Let's do this. There was a reason she got taken away from the both of them at some point. It seems that she wasn't going to school with Angela or whatever. So I don't know. The truth, I think, lies in between somewhere of that. Because one thing that surprised me with this is in my mind, I had formulated this image. Like I said, like the playhouse was a plastic Fisher Price thing. They lived in total squalor, drugs everywhere, crazy this. So when Tommy's like, oh, well, I own a trailer park. With that alone, I was like, oh, he owns a trailer park? Like that's probably, pretty decent cash flow coming in. And then,
Mhm.
oh, well, I gave Megan one of the trailers to live in because she had trashed ours basically. And I'm like, oh, so she had a free roof over her head. Okay. Well, I paid cash for her car. Okay. So more and more, I was like, what is this girl struggling over? You know what I'm saying? Like that level of stuff. And then also, like you said, with the foster mom, it makes you wonder, okay, what would it have looked like in 6 months when Megan was like, ugh, but I got to go to school every day here? What I got to do this? And I feel like the second she got away by herself in that trailer, that's when and I don't even know if it's a real Megan came out, but the unsupervised, I'm alone, no one's watching unless I put it on Facebook.
Yeah.
And this is how this is going to go. And I mean, we see the outcome of that.
And I wanna add that there could be this emotional or social, there could be this immaturity. So it's hard to be a parent in general. So I became a parent in my 30s and almost 34. Yeah, I was a few days before my 35th birthday. And I am so glad that I did not become a parent earlier on because I wasn't equipped. Like I 'Cause it in young adulthood, you're supposed to be selfish. You're supposed to think about your career, your goals, I don't know. And if people decide to become a parent, to me, your focus has to change and your child has to be the priority. It just has to. And, that's where, on my channel, I share, like, parenting education and parenting tips because it's hard. It's hard to be a parent. And if parents are having, those flashing thoughts of, I just want to strangle. Like you need to talk to somebody about that. Like you can't let those thoughts go unchecked and those feelings go where they're just building up inside, especially if there's a hatred toward a child that may just be displaying normal child behavior.
I often wondered with Megan,
Mhm.
because we would always see her. Most of my interpretation of Megan is those news interviews. Obviously, now with the trial coming out, but her back was to us most of the time, and she would turn and whatnot. So the front that she was putting on, whether it was a front, whether the tears were real or whatever,
Yeah.
but almost like I felt like there was a rage in Megan, and like, what does her face look like when that rage comes out? That she probably didn't let people see, but that Evelyn probably was subjected to behind closed doors. And then on that note too, so remember the friend that was like, I went out to lunch with them and I could smell Evelyn across the table. It was she was filthy. I mean, it's like, what is, and again, I just keep going back to, I guess, the disconnect. What is going through a person's mind who's gonna, like, in my world, I'm like, if the kid was that way, I wouldn't take them to see my friend because I'd be afraid I get turned in. And I certainly wouldn't be like, will you babysit my child? And they're filthy dirty with a diaper rash that's all crazy and stuff. Cause that's where I would be like, oh, somebody's going to call CPS on me. I mean, is there some level of disassociation or like just ignoring reality that has to be going on there?
And if she was living in that filth, because I've worked with people that didn't realize they had a smell because they lived in a home that had a smell. Does that make sense? Where they
Mhm.
had become used to to how things smelled. I've also lived overseas where like body odor. So in Europe, there was like a higher acceptance for like certain body odors or yeah, like and
Interesting.
and so I think that in this case, I hope that friend doesn't feel bad. I hope there's no guilt for that friend. So that friend didn't do anything wrong. So if I met with a friend and that day their child just so happened to be dirty, I might check in with them to be like, "Hey, everything all right?" Because also the child could have gotten dirty at the park right before we met, or so I wouldn't automatically assume that the child is being neglected. But if I saw my friend and this child over time and things aren't like they're always dirty, and my child and my friend is letting them eat with like dirty hands, and because that's not hygienic. And so I would definitely like have some thoughts going on in my mind of do you need some help? Do you need some support? But so that's where I hope the friend doesn't feel bad about not saying, because just seeing her that one time, seeing her dirty, that doesn't necessarily mean that, that doesn't predict what could have happened after or what did happen after.
Mhm.
I think it was soon after that lunch that she did what she did to Evelyn, and that's where I
Yeah.
wonder if she was starting to care less and that she wasn't even taking care, like, because it doesn't look like she was always dirty. Because other people, because the defense asked, "Was Evelyn clean?" They would ask those questions to try to get at, like, "Oh, she was a decent mom." I think that the defense was trying to put that in the jury's mind, and it was, I think, only that one friend and then the diaper rash from what I can remember. And so, yeah, that's that's a tough one.
Oh, for sure. And what did you think of when the case went to the jury?
Oh,
They leave, and, like, the next morning within, like, I think, what, an hour or so coming back, it was like, "Okay, well, we're ready." I felt like they went out, took a poll, we're like, "Are we all good? We got a lot of paperwork to do. Let's start doing it, and then come back in the morning."
and there was so much evidence because I think her fingerprint was on the foil and nothing else made sense. Like, it the I don't think Hunter would have known about that location. So I don't think Hunter was involved at all, but
Yeah,
because
me
in
neither.
the jury's mind, I think they would be ruling out, could it have been someone else? And to me, even if someone else was involved in the cover up and Megan never said, the fact that Megan lied time after time after time, I think that's where the jury was like, "Nope, she's guilty," and they found her guilty on all charges. This was one because there have been other cases where, the defendant had lied to the police and they didn't always charge them. I think her lies cost so much money because they went down. I think Ethan was in Mississippi or so, like, they went to his barracks and searched his barracks, like, they did all of these things trying to chase down her lies. And so I think they wanted to make an example of this, of like, "Hey, don't, if you lie time after time after time, like, that's a crime,
Yeah.
and
Oh, yeah.
we will charge you for it."
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Now, kinda winding it down here a little bit, do you have any closing thoughts, any feeling, whatever, that you wanna get out there about the case, about the trial?
This was a very difficult case, and once again, it is so horrific, and so I love to remind the true crime community to please take care of yourself, to drink your water. There were parts of this case that I didn't watch, so I didn't watch the Emmy going over everything, because just emotionally, so I work with clients all day, and so, if I had heard all of that information, that would have weighed me down, and I like being open about that because I'm a licensed psychologist. That's, I have some anxiety, but relatively, emotionally stable, but that hearing and seeing and watching all of these things as you dive in deeper, sometimes it can start to affect you. So just being aware of that. I love how you cover cases because you do it in just such a compassionate way. And once again, I thank you for having me here today.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. And yeah, I agree. Like the having to kind of just cut off where you know that your mental health can handle it and whatnot. And I think I appreciate that coming from, a doctor and whatnot like yourself. And yeah, I kind of did the same a little bit with some days. I mean, I think I had to come back and watch the MA. For me, watching the kid cases get to me. I mean, I'm not trying to like sit here and reduce other ones down or whatever, but the kid ones, because we were all kids at once, or some of us have children, whatever. And it's a vulnerable population that you don't ever, it gives me goosebumps, want to see these things happen to. And it's tough. And it just slowly seeps into like your everyday where it's like, why am I like, I found myself being like, why am I in a bad mood? Or why am I ripping people's heads off? Or, whatever. And I'm like, oh, wait, I've been in Megan Boswell world for like 2 weeks now.
And
I need to go watch the Golden Girls for a day. You know what I'm
seriously,
saying?
you have to go watch something funny, you have to laugh, you have to go out with friends, like, making sure that you're still connecting in
Yeah.
other ways because it really can bring on, in low levels, it can just cause some stress, and higher levels, it can almost be like secondary trauma, and so that's where I love just cautioning people as they are watching these cases. The thing
Yeah.
that I love is how the prosecution focused on that Evelyn mattered. And
Mhm.
because her mother threw her away like she was trash, and she wasn't. She
Yeah.
mattered. And so, yeah.
Yeah, I really like that part too. And again, I want to thank you for coming hanging out on the sofa today, conversating, give me your professional opinions and whatnot. Definitely would love to have you back to talk about other cases as they come down the pipeline. One thing I was literally sitting here thinking that I was like, oh my gosh, I would love to talk about this with you. Overall, the Ruby Frankie case, but the new you see that new docu series that's coming out? I think it's like I can't remember. I have it in my phone. It's this month or whatever. It's on Hulu and it looks really good.
I'll have to watch
I'd
it.
love to talk about that case with you. Oh my
Sounds
God.
good.
We might need to book a marathon day for that one though. A marathon week. There's so much going on there. But yeah, I greatly appreciate you hanging out here, and be sure and check out Dr. Barry's all of your YouTube. All her links are all down in the description box below. That's kind of it. So until I guess we gather here back at the sofa with you next time, I will be talking to you soon and seeing you in the comment section and on your own channel. Bye, everybody. Thank you. We'll see y'all soon.
I just wanted to say thank you again for watching the whole video, and also thank you for being part of the Sofa Squad. Special thanks to all the Patreon members, channel members from both of my channels, everybody who likes, shares, subscribes, comments in the comment sections. It helps the channel out so much. Now, don't forget, I do have that other channel, the podcast channel. That's where we go live, we hang out, we talk. We have kind of sort of a schedule, but just be sure and check it out. I'll put it up here on the screen. And then, like I said in the beginning of the video, if you want to follow me and Rosco on the Instagram, go on, check it out. It's right here on the screen again. But once again, thank you very much. I really appreciate you being part of the Sofa Squad, and I'll see you in the next video.